Going. All right. Good morning and welcome to the Mindfulness Broadcast. I forgot to pin me, everybody. I made all these promises and then I just didn't do it. All right, start over. Good morning and welcome to the Mindfulness Broadcast. So, as I mentioned, we're going to focus this morning on time and our relationship to time. This is one of my areas of highlight of interest, I should say. As a coach, I get to work with people all the time who are wanting to make magnificent and sometimes just minute changes in their lives. And one of the challenges that I hear over and over and over again is time. If I had time, if there were more hours in the day, if I didn't have to do all of these things with the time that I had, I would live this magnificent, amazing life. I would do all of these things. And I say it, so I'm not pointing the finger. I am pointing the finger, but I know that all of these are pointing back at me. I do the same thing. Well, I would do this if I had more time. And what research tells us over and over again is that just simply is a fallacy. We have a relationship with time. We have practices that we've created. Our brain likes repetition and habits and predictability. And so when we create a relationship with time that says, I don't have enough of it, and this is what I'm going to do with my waking hours, and we practice that and we do it over and over again, that becomes our comfort. It becomes what we do. And we do it well, and we practice it decade over decade. And what the research points out is when we are finally, quote unquote, given all this time, AKA vacation time or retirement, guess what? We still don't do all those things that we said we were going to do if we had more time. And there's so much research out there around this and so many great resources around this. The one that I recently have been tapping into is Ashley. I wrote down her last name so I wouldn't forget it. Willens, Ashley Willens. She is a writer for the Harvard School of Business. And she wrote a book a few years ago and published it in the midst of the pandemic, which was really helpful because our whole relationship with time became even more complicated in the midst of the pandemic. And many of us working from home, and what that did to our relationship with time. But one of the things that she recommends is that we do a time audit. And so that's what we're going to use our practice to do this morning, a time audit. And she says that what we do is take a typical day in our life, choosing a work day as opposed to a weekend, and we just review it. And she says what research tells us is the most typical day of our work week is a Tuesday. So if you really want to get serious about this, do it on a Tuesday. We're going to take a Friday because here we are on a Friday. And we take a look at how we spend our time, our relationship to time, our thoughts with time, how we spend our breaks. Do we take our breaks? How we spend our engagement with email, how we spend our engagement with social media. How do we take our lunch? Do we take our lunch? Do we take our full lunch? What do we do with those lunches? What are we doing with the time that we have, rather than using the time that we have mindlessly? Do we want to use it more mindfully, being more present with it? Because as much as we wish it, we aren't going to get more hours in the day, right? So we're going to use our mindfulness practice this morning in a little bit of a different way. It's going to be very guided. And I'm going to take you through yesterday, and we're going to do a time audit together and see if we want to change our relationship with time. So when you're ready, go ahead and close your eyes. You can also just take a soft gaze. We're going to invite a body that reminds us that we are in an intentional practice this morning. So it's a body that is attentive without rigidity. It's a body that is aware while also being relaxed. and at ease. Just finding that this morning. You might find your feet kind of ground. You might find your head lifts, your chin tucks. Perhaps your shoulders land back away from your ears. And then finding our breath, intentionally bringing it into this body, feeling it as you inhale through your nostrils, feeling it as you exhale through your lips. And as we move into this concept of time, noticing just right here in our breath, there's these moments of pauses, this beautiful suspension of time between the inhale and the exhale, and the exhale and the inhale. Bring your awareness to those spaces in between. And then begin to play with the idea of time in your mind and your relationship to it. For some of you, this might be visual. For some of you, you might be listening or creating some inner chatter. For some of you, it might be a feeling in your body or an emotion. Do you think of your time as limited, under pressure, abundant, at choice? And as you're exploring that, get curious about whether that's how you want to be. Are you okay with that? Do you like your relationship to time? And now I want to invite you to go back to yesterday. We're going to think of your day in 3 chunks: morning, midday, later in the day. Just big, sweeping chunks. And if yesterday wasn't a typical day for you, go to a day this week that was. Consider your morning. What do you do upon waking? How do you spend your first 30 minutes or even 10 minutes? Consider the time you spend before you go to work and log in, and then getting to work. What are the first things you do? Consider how you spend your time with meetings, transitioning from meetings, responding to emails, working with customers. How you take your breaks in the morning, your pauses, and then move to midday, considering a lunch. Did you take it? What did you do? How did you use it? How did you eat your food if you chose to eat your food at lunch? Moving into later in the day, again, back to emails, back to serving customers, back to meetings, and another break. Just walking through that. How was that? If you're in Zoom meetings or Teams meetings, are you scheduling time to transition from one meeting to another, or are you just clicking from one over to the other? How are you using your time in the middle of the day, yesterday? And then finally, we move to transitioning out of work. Perhaps that's back into family time, another job, volunteering, training, walking the dogs. How do you spend your evening? How did you spend your evening? Your time, your engagement levels, tending to yourself, tending to wellness. How did you use your time? And then finally transitioning into bed, into sleep. Consider routines, consider thoughts, consider habits. As we begin to close this practice, again, this is an audit, right? It's an opportunity to remove judgment, to consider our stories about time, to explore if we're using the time we have in mindful ways and meaningful ways. And if not, if there's something you would like to do different. As we bring our attention back to our breath, we begin to close. Just consider if you'd like to set an intention for one segment of your time today. Is there one intention that you would like to set that bubbles forward from this practice? Breathing in through your nose, breathing out through your lips, slowly opening your eyes and coming back together. Thank you for being here. Thanks for making the time.